again, thanks everyone for joining us today. I hope you're excited for today as I am, not just for this webinar, but of course because of why I'm wearing my England shirt, England playing in the World Cup. So hopefully, maybe you've been enjoying the World Cup. If not, hopefully you've just been enjoying your summer anyway. And of course, with the summer brings the eternal quest for a beach bod, like the good Hasselhoff here. And when we're searching for this beach bod, typically we kind of get into this situation where we're looking to decide, should we be hiring a personal trainer? And I think a personal trainer is falling into two key categories. You get your Chads and you get your Mias. And the Chads out there, they're going to sell to you. They're going to say they have all the latest gym equipment. They're going to have this magic powder that's going to get you to your big end goal, which is that David Hasselhoff beach bod. The Mias, they have all the latest gym equipment as well. They have the magic powder, but they're going to sit you down. They're going to take you through an assessment to make sure that you can work with her effectively, she can work with you effectively, so she can then prescribe an achievable goal for you that will get you to that beach bod. As part of that goal setting, Mia also sits you down and starts prescribing a number of milestones that she knows she can achieve with you, that when you complete these milestones, they all form together to get you to the big end goal, in this case, a certain amount of weight loss in a certain time period. Mia's also prescribe you the plan to get to that end goal, a plan to achieve those milestones, including the dependencies that she has on you to get you to those milestones, including maybe incorporating your partner, your husband or your wife to enforce the diet that you need to follow to get to this beach body goal. And ultimately, Mia's going to make sure that you're willing to meet this plan, to meet her dependencies, partner with her before she takes you on as a client. And if you're like me, we're typically going to always go with Mia. We're going to sort of invest in Mia and go on that journey with her. Today in 2018, most B2B SaaS companies are selling like Chads. And that is a problem for these companies. It doesn't enable sustainable, profitable growth to be driven in what is today a very challenging market. The answer to how you sell like a Mia is something that you already have the answers to inside your B2B SaaS companies, I'm convinced, because you know how to deliver powerful recurring value to your customers. You know that it's not just a case of your product and your customer combining to achieve that value. You need to apply the different activities, the roles, the data, the systems to that product and to your customer to achieve that recurring value, i.e. that your customer success strategy that represents all those different activities and processes and systems and roles and data. There's no reason why you can't apply that customer success strategy to your prospects. And if we can do that and apply it to your prospects, we can also then drive more sales, bigger sales, more frequently, while still ensuring that we're acquiring customers that you know then you can retain and expand. So today we're going to talk about what are the core building blocks that I've applied very successfully in building a customer success strategy, and how we can integrate that into the core milestones, the core phases of a sales strategy in a B2B SaaS company, how they overlap. And a key theme here is going to be this prescriptive motion. And so we're going to talk about how we build prescriptive outcomes, how we build prescriptive adoption plans, how we build these formulas, and how they can be integrated into your sales strategy and ultimately your marketing strategy as well. So we're going to do this in two main sections over the next sort of 25 or so minutes. We're going to explain why you don't want to be a Chad, why your B2B SaaS company can't be a Chad, why you want to be a Mia. We're going to look at the commodification of B2B SaaS. We're going to understand what value types are now being sought after by B2B SaaS buyers in 2018. And then we're going to get into how do we design these prescriptive outcomes? How do we build a prescriptive adoption formulas? And how are these integrated into our sales strategy? building that bridge between our sales and CS teams, our sales and CS strategies, and achieving differentiation in your market as a B2B SaaS company, both from a sales and a CS perspective. So let's get into it, and let's first ask the question as to, well, is your B2B SaaS company a Chad? The Chads, as we talked about, these are focusing on selling the latest feature functionality. They're AI enabled. That's what their sales pitch is focused on, and they're selling against outcomes that are around cost reduction, revenue increases, increases in scale, increases in quality. And I'm sure all this sounds familiar to you. You're proud of your feature functionality. You're proud of your 125 different APIs, your machine learning enabled capabilities. You've even got proof that you can drive cost reduction, revenue increases, quality increases, and so on. But so can everyone else. So can the majority of other B2B SaaS companies out there. And so your feature functionality, your machine learning enabled capabilities, your proof that you can achieve these types of outcomes, these are commodities in B2B SaaS today. And selling against these types of commodities makes, again, makes it very hard to achieve scalable growth, scalable profitability. They're no longer differentiators. So let's drill into this concept slightly deeper and think about the products, think about your feature functionality in your B2B SaaS products. I would argue that the commodification of B2B SaaS is most acute at this feature function level. And this is not, the fact that this is a commodity is an enabling factor to the growth of the B2B SaaS industry, which is not a bad thing, but it's something we need to factor into our go-to-market and our customer success strategy. It's thanks to the likes of Microsoft and their Azure platform and Google and AWS that this commodification of feature functionality of machine learning, of AI is happening. They're providing these pre-built services that have massively decreased both the cost and the technological barriers to getting into machine learning, adopting the latest and greatest feature functions into your B2B SaaS products. Everyone can do it now. It's less complicated than it used to be. You don't need to go and recruit out a team of data scientists to integrate ML into your product anymore. And so we're seeing it everywhere. And again, that's a good thing. This type of capability is driving huge value for our customers, but it doesn't serve as a differentiator anymore. But let's suppose that your product feature functions in your B2B SaaS company are differentiators. Let's say I'm wrong, they're not commodities. Ask a question as to whether your prospects know that. Can they see that in what is probably a very saturated market that you're operating within? If you're surrounded by hundreds, if not thousands of other SaaS products like yours, can you rely on your prospects to be able to understand that your feature functions are differentiators? B2B SaaS market saturation is a real thing. MarTech is a great example of that. I love this visualization. chiefmartech.com each year produces what they call the MarTech 5000. And they produce this one pager which basically consolidates all the logos of all the MarTech companies out there, and we can see it's a lot of stuff going on there. It's very hard to visualize. It's very hard to understand. In 2018, it wasn't even the MarTech 5000. In fact, what they found was that there were 6,829 marketing tech companies. And it's not just in MarTech. Sales tech is the same. FinTech's becoming this way. And so there's a lot of white noise out there that prospects are having to process from when they're engaging with vendors, engaging in sales cycles. And so again, ask yourselves, can you rely on your prospects to really be able to differentiate your feature functionality from everyone else? I would argue probably not. So let's talk about value. Let's talk about, well, can we differentiate ourselves by selling outcomes by selling value. Certainly most sales leaders out there in your companies are going to know that feature function selling anyway is not the way to go. It's not the most effective sales strategy. We've got to be selling outcomes. We've got to be selling value. But here again, we run into commodification. As we saw with Chad, who's just selling against achieving a beach bod, which is what every other personal trainer might be selling against. Every B2B SaaS company out there is largely selling against these types of outcomes. And so we need to be able to move beyond that. In March, April this year, Bain & Company produced an article which was in the Harvard Business Review. And they produced an article which talked about all the different elements of value, the types of value that B2B buyers are looking for when they're considering a product or a solution. And they organized these, I think, 40 types of value into 5 levels into this pyramid we can see here on the screen. And we'll drill into this. I know it's a little small right now, but the theory, the basis behind the pyramid is at the bottom we have these very objective value types, and as we go up the levels in the pyramid, the value types get more subjective and more personal, and Bain & Company argue they get more powerful, they get more differentiated. If we look at the bottom of the pyramid, what Bain talks about are table stakes at the very bottom, i.e. these are the value types you need to be offering in your product and delivering in your product just to get a seat at the table, just to have a chance of acquiring a customer. I would argue in B2B SaaS, what Bain have classed as functional value are table stakes in B2B SaaS. If you're not out there able to offer and then deliver, like I have on my slide, cost reduction and improved top line, better product quality, more scalability for the customer, you just don't get to play the game. But again, as I say, most companies, and I'm sure you recognize these value types with your own product, everyone's offering this, everyone's selling against this. And so we need to be able to move beyond these table stakes. We need to be able to move up the pyramid and start selling and assuring our customers on the how, the what and the how behind these more subjective value types. Not be a Chad, be a Mia. So how can we do this? Let's understand how Mia does it. Let's understand how Mia is using her customer success strategy to be a sales differentiator, to play against those subjective value types. As we saw, she was coming in and she was saying, hey, I have all the feature functionality you need. I have the magic powder, AKA I have my machine learning enabled algorithms, or I have my 125 different APIs. Maybe I'm blockchain enabled as well. She has the stated ability to achieve the client's headline goal, to get to that weight loss that will get them to that beach bod. But then she keeps going. She starts prescribing, and therefore she starts educating the prospect on how we're going to get to that headline goal. She makes it clear what outcomes will be achieved and what outcomes won't be achieved. She prescribes the outcomes that will be achieved. She quantifies them. She prescribes when they're going to be achieved and in what order, how long they're going to take. She's going to prescribe how these outcomes are going to be achieved in terms of what steps we're taking, in what order, what dependencies she has on the customer to achieve these outcomes, where there are dependencies, such as we talked about recruiting the partner, recruiting the husband, the wife, the boyfriend, the girlfriend, the dog, whoever, to enforce the dietary restrictions to get to certain outcomes. And what Mia's doing, in my view, is leveraging the 3 core building blocks that I would highly recommend you design your customer success strategy around, to enable it to be prescriptive, enable it to be both a powerful CS strategy as well as a true sales differentiator. Again, if we look at what Mia's doing here, she's using her profile assessment to make sure that what she has as predefined as an ideal customer profile is being applied to the clients she takes on. She's prescribing what I call value-based outcomes. So not just the headline goal around the weight loss and the beach bod, but more tangible milestones that aggregate up to achieving the headline outcome. And she's prescribing a plan. She's prescribing what I would think of as an adoption plan in a B2B SaaS context to the client and saying, look, this is what we're going to do. This is the formula we're going to follow to get to these outcomes that will then get you to this headline goal. And this is differentiating Mia. This is differentiating Mia against the Chads. The Chads are selling against just the feature functionality, maybe their pricing, maybe their slick relationship skills. Doesn't cut it anymore in B2B SaaS and probably not in the world of personal training. So for the final section of this webinar, we're going to drill into these building blocks. And I'm going to focus on the bottom two, the prescriptive value-based outcomes and the prescriptive adoption plans. With the ideal customer profile, that ultimately is a byproduct of defining the other two blocks. It's a fairly intuitive concept, and I have an article on my website around ideal customer profiles if you wanted to drill in a little bit more. But for this session, we're going to focus on the bottom two. And by focusing on the bottom two, we're really going to hone in on this prescriptive motion. Outcomes is, again, not a new word. It's not a new concept in customer success. Everyone talks about outcomes these days. I'm going to zero in on my definition of outcomes as being value-based and being prescriptive. And adoption plans, again, I'm going to take a very scientific, formulaic approach to building adoption plans. And by doing this, again, I believe, and I've seen companies able to really appeal to the more subjective value types we were talking about before, around reducing risk, ensuring that the customer has confidence in the expertise they're accessing during the investment process, i.e. during the sales cycle, as well as then during the journey post-sale with your customer success teams. So when I talk about value-based outcomes, when I talk about adoption plans, these I combine into a concept called adoption methodologies. Ultimately, this is my language. You can call these milestones, these plans, the collection, whatever you like. It's really what is important, and what I want you to focus on is what's contained within these and what they achieve. In these definitions that I provided, a definition of value-based outcomes and a definition of adoption plans, I've underlined three key concepts that I want to make sure you take away. If we start on the right-hand side, formulas, so I mentioned this is a formulaic process. This is I think of it as, a year ago, I bought the domain customersuccessscience.com because I was so adamant, based on what I've delivered up to now in my career and the companies I work with, that this is a scientific type of approach. It shouldn't be an artistic approach. It shouldn't be a blank piece of paper per client. The unit economics of your subscription revenue model just don't allow you to go in with a blank piece of paper into every sales cycle and build a custom bespoke approach to get them to value, and then deliver that custom bespoke approach per customer post sale. The model just doesn't support that from an economic point of view. So we need to have this stuff predefined into formulas that we can prescribe. Sustainment. Value realization is my passion in life, I guess, both for companies I work with, as well as hopefully what I can deliver to you today on this webinar. And it's not just about achieving value realization, it's about sustaining value realization. How are we maintaining the value realization across the customer journey, baking that concept into your customer success strategy? Again, powerful differentiator. And then going back to the left-hand side, again, going back to this core concept today for this webinar is prescription. So let's drill into prescription. Why be prescriptive? And before we get into how to be prescriptive, why be prescriptive in case that isn't clear? Two main reasons. One, if we can be prescriptive in our customer success strategy, we can effectively integrate those prescriptions into our sales qualification and sales discovery processes. And that enables us to acquire the right customer. And by the right customer, I mean a customer that we can drive recurring value for, and therefore we can retain and expand, which of course retention and expansion is the name of the game. It's how we ultimately should be measuring the success of our customer success strategy. So by being prescriptive in the sales cycle, we can make sure we're acquiring the right customer, that we're not acquiring square pegs to put into our round hole post sale. From a sales perspective, for those of you who work in sales today and are incentivized around optimizing your sales strategy and are wondering, well, why do I care about being prescriptive if it just adds value post-sale? Well, it adds a huge value pre-sale. It's very, very powerful as a sales strategy. The CEB, who are now part of Gartner, they got acquired by Gartner last year, but they produced a ton of research around this prescriptive motion in a sales cycle. And their research found that customers who experienced a prescriptive sales cycle, who received a prescriptive buying process, found that the purchasing process was exceptionally easier, which is a good thing. We all know that if we can make it easy to buy, customers will buy. CEB also found that if you can be prescriptive in the sales process, you create advocacy, and that was measured in the form of buyers telling the CEB that they had a lot less regret about the purchases they made when they were making that through a prescriptive buying experience compared to those that were just sold on a relationship basis or a feature function basis. So we're ultimately kickstarting this advocacy process in the sales cycle by selling in a prescriptive manner. And the CEB found that net out of all this, that by being prescriptive, it was 62% more likely for a salesperson or sales team to make a high quality sale. Define high quality as being selling a more premium product, getting a higher contract value, 62% more likely to do that by being prescriptive than not. So that's why to be prescriptive. How can we be prescriptive? Let's start with how we construct these prescriptive value-based outcomes that I've been talking about. When I construct value-based outcomes with the companies that I've worked with, I consider 4 key inputs. 2 around the ideal customer. So using our domain knowledge, our industry knowledge, the knowledge we have about our customers, we can define, well, what are the goals? What are the big, hairy headline strategic goals? Think of the functional value that Bain talks about. What are those goals in our target market for our ideal customer? There's only going to be so many of those. So what are those? Then again, using that same domain and industry expertise about our customers, what are the jobs our ideal customers are performing? What are their accountabilities and responsibilities? How are they incentivized? What desired experiences do they want? What are their reporting lines? What do our customers' customers want? What are their ambitions? And again, build hypotheses around what these attributes are as it relates to our ideal customer's job. We then take those 2 inputs and combine them with the features of our product, which obviously we know because it's our product, it's our B2B SaaS product, and the value enablers of those products, of those product features. And by value enablers, I mean, is product feature A automating a step? Is it giving access to a piece of data? Is it enabling some form of scalability? Is it speeding something up? What is that feature designed to do? And so if we take an example of a B2B SaaS solution that is designed to be used by big engineering functions, we can say that, well, the ideal customer goal, the big strategic goal our customers are shooting for, or one of them at least, is cost reduction in their engineering function. We can say that a core job that exists in our ideal customer is QA testing. And we know that one of our product features is this feature around test script management, and that feature enables automation of a good percentage of this QA testing process. With all those inputs in mind, we can then identify an intersection between those 4 inputs that creates this value-based outcome. And so in this example, the value-based outcome we can come up with is a 50% time reduction in QA testing if the person or the users that are performing this quality assurance testing job adopt the test script management functionality, because if they do that, they get access to this automation value, which drives this 50% time reduction in their QA testing process. And we know that this 50% time reduction contributes to the achievement of the customer's headline ideal goal, which is that cost reduction. So why or how is this prescriptive? How can we have confidence that we can actually prescribe that outcome on a repeatable basis? Well, we control, obviously, the features that are in our product. That is under our complete control. We therefore define and control what value enablers we are including in the product. What are those product features designed to do? Are they automating something, and so on? We can have a very, very high confidence that the assumptions we're making around the ideal customer's strategic goals, the big headline goals that apply to the TAM we're selling into and we're delivering into, that we've got those down. We've got those accurately defined, because again, there's only so many big, hairy strategic goals that our customers are going to have. We can have a high confidence in the hypotheses we've developed around what are the jobs our ideal customers are performing, how are they performing, how are they incentivized, what responsibilities do they have, and so on. But you'll notice that that isn't blue. And so we can be prescriptive. We can be prescriptive around the outcome because we have 3 of these inputs locked down with a very, very high degree of confidence. And we have high enough confidence around the ideal customer job. So we can prescribe these outcomes to these target customers and talk to them about these outcomes as it applies to their jobs. But that doesn't mean that we can just then prescribe the outcome, they start using the product, and they're going to realize value. They're going to start achieving these outcomes. In reality, the ideal customer's job is never the ideal customer's job. It's the customer's job has a number of variables based on all sorts of different dynamics and variables about the customer, the geography, the size of the customer, the maturity of the customer, even the personality of the individuals involved in the customer performing that job. So we have to consider in each customer's case in the sales cycle, what is the actual customer's job? And acknowledge the fact that there is always going to be, highly likely, going to be a gap that we need to bridge between our prescribed value-based outcome and the realities of the job our actual customer is performing. Exactly how are they performing that QA testing process? What are the differences in how they do it versus the customer that we acquired last week? To bridge that gap, that's where these adoption plans come in. This is why we need these adoption plans. These adoption plans should answer this core question. What are the activities, the roles, the data systems that bridge that gap, that enable that job, that user that's performing that job, or the users performing that job, to adopt the feature functionality that enables that value-based outcome to be realized, and therefore the contribution to the achievement of that customer's ideal goal. We always need these adoption plans in place and ready to go to prescribe to make sure we can bridge that gap to drive adoption. The creation of these adoption plans, again, is driven by our knowledge we already have of the customer's domain, their industry, their business model, the knowledge of our product, of course. And so again, we can be prescriptive. We can build very high confidence hypotheses around how our customers would adopt this feature functionality, and we can build these plans. And these plans, this is just a sample of types of inputs and types of considerations and activities that you might put into an adoption plan. And I think of these in kind of 2 core categories: what needs to happen inside the product with the customer, or by you, or on behalf of the customer, or by the customer as a standalone activity, and then what needs to happen outside the product by you as the vendor, or in partnership with the customer, or indeed, again, standalone by the customer, i.e. a dependency you have on them. So communication of within the customer around what's going on with this new product they've invested in is a good example of something that has to happen outside the product. But again, the way you're defining what configuration needs to happen, what integration has to happen, what data migration has to happen, what type of training has to happen, what customer dependencies you do have, you can predefine those. You don't need to build those on a bespoke basis per customer, but you need to build this plan because you've got to bridge that adoption gap between the job and your value-based outcomes. But again, this can be done in a prescriptive motion. So in conclusion, the game has changed. The game has changed for B2B SaaS. It's constantly changing, but I don't think the pace of change as it relates to being able to drive sustainable growth and profitability in B2B SaaS has changed at such a rate than what's happening right now because of this commodification of the functionality, the technology, as well as the maturity, the way that customers are starting to buy this technology and the types of value that they're looking for. They're looking for these personal subjective value types. You cannot sell to these value types, nor even deliver these value types, just thinking about your feature functions, your machine learning capabilities, or just talking about these functional value types around cost reduction. We have to go up this pyramid. To go up this pyramid, we need to be prescriptive. We need to think about value-based outcomes like I've defined and how we prescribe those and how we build those to be prescriptive. We need to think about adoption plans and think about prescribing these plans as ready-to-go formulas in our sales cycle to, again, play to these subjective value types that our prospects are looking for and that they're then looking to realize post-sale. If we can do that, we can join forces as customer success and sales. We can take these customer success strategy building blocks. We can integrate them into our sales strategy. We can use our ICPs to drive lead identification and opportunity qualification. We can use our prescriptive value-based outcomes to form the foundations of the solution that we're presenting to prospects. So we're presenting the prescription of the outcomes and why, the education of why these outcomes are right for the customer to get them to their strategic goal in our solution presentations. And we're using these plans, again, as part of that presentation, as part of the contract negotiations to make sure the customer gets a sense and gets confidence in how we're going to deliver those outcomes and de-risk their investment. This enables these prospects to make bigger investments with you, make these investments quicker, as well as, of course, enables you then to acquire customers that you have a high confidence in being able to retain and expand because they are ready to go to follow the prescriptions you've made and follow the formulas you've designed. I hope this was useful. I would love to connect with all of you, answer any questions you have that you maybe want to take offline with me. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Twitter. There's my email address. As you can tell, I love talking about this stuff. So let's have a chat. And Meg, I'll hand it back to you.
Yes,